welcome to Literary Prospects, where we talk to authors and literary professionals about books, publishing, and the writing life. I'm Kelley Vick. I'm the host of the program, and in just a moment, it will be my pleasure to introduce today's guest. But first, a reminder that if you like what you hear, please do take a moment to subscribe. It helps us out, and you can make sure you never miss an episode. Also, we've opened a Literary Prospects shop, so if you're looking for bookish shirts, totes, and gifts, please check that out at literaryprospects.etsy.com. And to grab books featured on the podcast and check out more curated book lists, you can visit the Literary Prospects bookstore on bookshop.org. We'll leave all those links below in the show notes. And now, let's introduce today's guest. Swan Huntley is a writer and illustrator living in Los Angeles. Her novels include Getting Clean with Stevie Green, The Goddesses, We Could Be Beautiful, and most recently, I Want You More. She's also the writer and illustrator of the darkly humorous The Bad Mood book and You're Grounded, an anti-self-help book to calm you the fuck down. Swan earned an MFA at Columbia University and has received fellowships from McDowell and Yaddo. Swan Huntley, thank you so much for joining today, and congratulations on publication of your new novel, I Want You More. Publishers Weekly says I Want You More is deliciously disquieting, strikes a delicate tonal balance between seductive and serious. Readers who have ever wondered, do I want to be her or be with her, will feel a chill up their spine. Kirkus Reviews says, like cinnamon red hots, this of-the-moment domestic thriller keeps you sweetly sucking away till it delivers the punch. Screenwriter Graham Moore says, a deliciously twisted love story that sneakily upends your expectations at every turn. A candy apple with a razor blade hidden inside. And author Ivy Pachoda says, I Want You More has it all. A modern, stylish thriller that probes the bleeding edge of self and other. Huntley's novel is sexy, propulsive, and damn good. So with that, what can you tell us about I Want You More?
My quick elevator pitch about I Want You More is, this is a book about a ghostwriter who goes to the home of a client in East Hampton who's a celebrity chef. They fall for each other, things turn dangerous. There's an element of like single white female was an influence. I thought about that when I was writing this book. Also War of the Roses. If people don't know what that is, it's a, I don't know, 90s movie with Danny DeVito and Kathleen Turner about people who love each other and are stuck in a house and trying to kill each other. And then we have like the backdrop of like a Martha Stewart-esque compound in the Hamptons.
So what was the inspiration for this one? What was the spark that started this one for you?
Yeah, a lot of the time I don't have a single moment that I can pinpoint, you know, when I write a book, like the original seed, but in this case I can. I was writing the memoirs of a Real Housewife of New York City. And during this process, she said to me, you're coming to my manor October 21. And I thought I would rather sleep in a box / break an arm. Thank you. That's a great idea for a novel. Like, what if I had gone to that house? What could have transpired?
Can you say who it was?
Dorinda Medley.
Okay. Oh, Dorinda. Real Housewives fan here. So yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. The manor. Oh, we've seen it a lot in the, she makes it nice.
Make it nice. That's the name of the book.
Is it really? You've mentioned in interviews that you don't particularly love it when authors give their protagonists the job of writer. But in this particular book, ghostwriter works beautifully as the metaphor. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see this book as one big metaphor for all my bad relationships. Like I was taking all the feelings that I had in those relationships and externalizing them to the most dramatic degree possible. And I think what happens when you first fall for someone is you kind of get lost in their identity. I think it's impossible not to do this. You're introduced to somebody's life. You're spending a lot of time together. It's easy to lose yourself. The lines get blurred. And so that's what I'm exploring in this book. And when you work as a ghostwriter for somebody, I mean, your job is to be a mind reader, which is impossible. It's an inherently impossible job. But you are expected to write as if you are this other person. So you're really channeling this other person and becoming this other person. And for Zara Pines, our protagonist, who feels especially lost and vulnerable in the beginning, it's the perfect setup for her to get swept up. And Jane, has a really big personality and is very charismatic.
And Jane is a celebrity chef, as you
Yes.
mentioned. Why celebrity chef?
Well, I thought making her a Real Housewife would have been too much. And what other type of, celebrity can I make her that's not actress? Food, food. And I don't cook at all. I like assemble at best, just throw stuff in a bowl. That's what I do. But when I was growing up, the Food Network was on at my house all the time. So these characters of that time imprinted themselves on my brain. And I still think of them now when I see certain dishes. I'm like, oh yeah, Barefoot Contessa made that once. So I thought it was perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. They sort of do, weirdly, maybe it's because you're watching them in a kitchen or something, but feel like members of your home in a different way, all those Food Network stars for some reason.
Totally.
You have said that all of your books are a conversation with yourself. What do you mean by that?
Well, so right now I'm working in a few different mediums. I'm doing these illustrated gift books, and I'm also writing novels, and I'm also writing for film and TV, and all of these things that I'm doing bring out different sides of myself and different ways of having a conversation with myself. So I would say with the illustrated books, one of which comes out soon, or I guess it might have already come out when we post this. It's called You're Grounded, an anti-self-help book to calm me the fuck down. And that is a very direct conversation that I'm having with myself that I'm letting you in on. It's like, I don't feel grounded. How can I feel grounded? Well, maybe I could look at a tree. That's me assuming that we're all sort of going through the same thing. I mean, I assume this all the time, but it's bringing you in a very direct way. With the novels, it's trickier and a lot more nuanced and interesting because I assume that because it's fiction, nobody knows it's me. I put all my guards come down. When I write nonfiction, all the guards go up. It's like, well, if that person reads that, it's very hard not to do that. Not even about the other people, but how do I want to be portrayed? And I'm pretty willing to fall on my face in public, but still, like the barriers go up. So with fiction, there are no barriers. And I think fiction is ultimately about writing your fantasies and your dreams. And I often don't even know what my issues are until I read a novel later. Like I can tell you, I think we could retitle my first novel, We Could Be Beautiful. That could be retitled Swan Sphere of Intimacy. My second book, The Goddesses, could be retitled That 25-year-old I was enamored with when I was 17. Third book, Getting Clean with Stevie Green. Swan comes out and realizes she's an alcoholic. And then this one is like, I get something about relationships that I'm honestly still working through. But it's this, interesting way of having a very deep conversation that I'm letting people in on. And then, of course, I really believe that after you make something, it's no longer yours too. So people are projecting whatever they want onto the work and taking what they need to take from it.
What do you like about the thriller genre?
It's so fun to write. Like it's like plot and then put a heart around the plot. Like it's taken me a minute to get here. If you said plot in my grad school program, you were like dead. Like we were talking about like craft and like white space and stuff. So I was actually like came out of that sort of anti-commercial, anti-plot. And now I see I just didn't understand how to plot then. And I mean, ultimately, what I'm interested in is character. And that's what I remember from movies and books. I I actually can often not remember the plot. I always remember the very quiet moments that seem the most human to me, that seem the most honest. But I think that books are here to entertain people. I mean, when I ask myself, what am I doing on this earth? I'm like, I think I'm entertaining people. That's, I think, what I'm doing. So how do I get somebody to flip the page and to have fun while hopefully also, you know, experiencing something that is honest?
Mm-hmm. What do you think makes a thriller work like that?
Uh, I mean, I think depth of character, I think, and it really, it's about suspense and pacing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, because you're always thinking, how much information should I dole out at this moment? Who should dole out the information? What do I want the reader thinking? It's this whole elaborate manipulation scheme that's
Mm-hmm.
just a blast to try to pull off.
You mentioned grad school. You got your MFA at Columbia. What was what was that experience like? What was the MFA experience like for you?
It was a blur. I got sober halfway through my MFA experience. So like the first half of it, I was doing my heaviest drinking, which got so bad that I was just like coming out of blackouts in like deep Brooklyn with weird people. So I ended up just having to drink alone. And it was this total Jekyll Hyde experience where I would wake up and find a new painting on the wall and be like, I guess I did that. And I guess my other self totally cleaned up everything. How nice. So yeah, so that was the first half of grad school. And then I got sober. And in a way, I was even crazier after I got sober. I was like sitting in the back of the lecture hall reading Pema Chodron books within the other book that we were supposed to be reading. So I don't even know what happened in grad school, but it was the perfect place to get sober because, I mean, honestly, it was kind of bullshit. Like it was very expensive and a great place to meet people, and I'm so glad I did it. But yeah, not like hard. A good like, you know, soft place to be while getting sober.
Do you feel like it helped your writing?
I think it really taught me how to critique in a useful way. You know, I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the big useful things that you get from programs like that, hopefully, you're just in all these workshop settings, and critiquing is an art. You know, you want to be honest with people, but you don't want to break their hearts
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that was really valuable, like seeing how some of my professors did it, you know, that was
Mm-hmm.
great.
You mentioned you've also been a ghostwriter yourself. How did you get into that gig? And what was that like besides being invited to a Real Housewives manor and getting the spark for your latest novel?
Yeah, how did I get this? I I mean, it's just a job that I'm very capable of doing. And technically, it's not a difficult job. It's about organizing information, which I'm very good at. It's about being a professional eavesdropper, which is, you know, if I had to pick another word for writer, I would say that's my actual job. And whatever, it's about creating a narrative from somebody's like glob of information. So all of that stuff is I'm just good at it. It's not that hard for me. What's difficult about it is that it's writing is such a subjective thing, and we all have our different, you know, understandings of ourselves and of each other. And I've been in situations now more than once where I write something, the people around us, you know, the agents and all those people are like, wow, you really captured this person's voice. But then the person thinks you did not capture my voice. And that might be because they understand themselves in a different way than you do. And also they want their fan base to understand them in
Mm,
perhaps an aspirational way. So there are all
mm,
these complicated layers, you know, and in that way, it becomes totally impossible. So the ideal person is somebody who is just really trusting just really trusting. Yeah. And like open to being collaborative in a useful way.
You have 2 books out this month. We've been talking about I Want You More. We talked a little bit about You're Grounded. How did this happen that you have 2 books coming out at the same time? And how are you not completely burnt out?
Oh my God, man. I don't know. I mean, this is all so exciting. It's so different from like sitting by myself making stuff, but that's what I'm going to do after this, you know? And I'm, yeah, grateful for this part, but it's always like, it's jarring, you know, getting into that. Oh, let me talk about it. And it's so funny because books take a long time to publish. So this is stuff that I finished a really long time ago. So I'm sort of remembering what it's even about having these interviews.
Yeah.
I don't know how this is all happening at once. I have different publishers for the gift books and the novel. So it sort of just accidentally happened that it all came out together. I'm gay, so cramming it all into Pride makes sense. Really capitalizing on that. But yeah, I'm trying to tell myself it's not a bad thing. They're piggybacking on each other, and like, what a great time to talk about all the art together.
And what are you working on now?
I am now, I mean, today I'm making a bunch of visual art, but what like the bigger project that I'm working on is a memoir, and that comes out at some point next summer. It's called How to Escape Yourself or Die Trying: An Addict in a Really Long Bike Ride. And it's both about my pilgrimage on El Camino in Spain, which is a 500-mile pilgrimage across Spain. And, you know, people did this back in the day as a penance, you know, Christian penance. And now it's sort of just, I don't know, either religious or vaguely spiritual, depending on who you are. Certainly transformative. I think that's why people go there. And then the other narrative is my addiction history. I think there are a lot of addiction memoirs that follow this boilerplate of, hey, I was wasted for most of the book. And then at the very end, it's like, I got sober, peace, it's chill. That's really not how it works. So I want mine to be a much broader discussion of what addiction is. It's not really about the thing that you're addicted to. It's about the mindset of trying to throw external things into the spiritual hole. So it was like, before it was drinking, it was fantasy from the time I was very young, which is interesting because I'm, you know, now make up stories for a living. And it was cigarettes, and then it was like sugar, you know, it just goes on and on.
How do you think that all of these different art forms that you're sort of working in feed each other? You just said you do visual art and illustration, you're working in memoir, of course, writing novels and fiction. How does that all, do you sort of feel one thing that you're working in seeping into the other in different ways, or how does that work?
Yeah, of course. I mean, at this point, I have come to understand that I'm not that interesting, and then I'm going to keep exploring like the same things over and over again, and I'm going to have the same voice forever. Like, sure, I'll evolve, hopefully I'll evolve and like have some slightly new things to say, and new plots, but like, sure, of course they all inform one another. What's different though is the voices of these things. Like, You're Grounded is a lot more intentionally funny and dark. I mean, I would describe all my work as funny and dark, but different mediums highlight different facets of my personality.
What's your daily routine like then? You've got all these different projects going. What does it look like?
It looks like, I mean, it really depends on what I'm working on. So if I'm writing the first draft of a book, then I try to go away. Ideally, I just leave the country for a while and work solely on the book and make it my whole life for a small period of time. So I just got back from Costa Rica, where I was for like a month, finishing a draft of this memoir, because I knew that I was going to get back and be talking to you. And when I'm in that mindset, I mean, it really is like everything revolves around the book. Like, I don't have any friends in Costa Rica. Fine, I have like one friend. I have like 1.5 friends, but I'm trying to not make a bunch of friends because it's harder when you have to say no to stuff. You know, it's easier to get out of the environment, get away from where you live, and just like bang it out. That's how I like to work. And then in between those times, I don't know, like I said, today I'm making a bunch of visual art. I sort of am just trying to go with the flow and do the next organic thing.
Have you always been a writer?
I've always been a writer. Ever since I was a little kid, I was recording everything. One time I must have been like 11 or 12 maybe. And I grew up in San Diego. We took a train somewhere in Southern California. And I recorded this train journey by lightly holding a pencil over a series of like printer pages, you know, like whatever, 8.5 by 11, whatever it is, like just white printer pages. So at the end, I had like, I don't know, a just little stack of these pages with squiggly line across them. I was recording everything. I have my first zit taped in a journal that I popped and taped in there. I have some of my sister's
That's
hair.
one I've never heard before.
I mean, yeah, it didn't really retain its color, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would just always have compulsively written things down. And I think it means that I've remembered perhaps more. And I'm also, of course, like choosing what the memories are as I write them down. And now I'm very aware of that.
When did you start writing fiction?
I mean, really, I can trace this back to like childhood. Like, my dad was a marine biologist at Scripps Institute of Oceanography in La Jolla, and he would take us down there and put us in lab coats and like have us look at krill. He was like a krill expert for a little while, which those are like tiny little shrimps that whales eat. And I looked at the krill and wrote poems about them. Like, I have like a bunch of poems about krill now. So that kind of says everything. Like, I do not do science.
What was the road to publication like for you?
Janky, super janky. Like, I heard all these stories about other people's janky journeys. I was like, no, mine's going to be great. And then no, that's not what happened. Okay, the punchline of this is like outlining. Wow, that really saved me. But what happened was I wrote an entire book as my thesis for grad school. My grad school advisors read it and they were like, wow, you're really good. Or they were like, you should send this out. All these agents read it and they were like, you're a really good writer, but nothing happens in this book. And I was like, what? I mean, I was astonished. And also in my mind, I had like envisioned this book so hard. Like, I designed many different versions of the cover. I had a whole notebook filled with info about the main character. I was like, this is happening. After that, I finally put that book to the side, wrote another book, sent it out again. All the agents said, wow, this is a really good book. But nothing happens in this book except for one dude who was like, yeah, but if you change a bunch of stuff, then I'll consider repping you. And I took that like marching orders. You know, I was like, all right, this is happening. I'm so excited. I mean, I really thought I had arrived. Like Mary Tyler Moore throwing her hat up in the air in New York City. That was me, like with the proverbial hat. I was like, yes. And we were on Fifth Avenue, which I thought was like so cool at the time, but now I know it's like the douchiest place to ask somebody to meet you. Like, no. So I made all these changes. I went back to this guy and he basically didn't remember who I was. He was like, what? No, not repping you. And I was devastated. And I ended up taking a week-long class with this woman, Ann Hood, at my alma mater, Eckerd College in St. Petersburg, Florida. I believe Anne also has a new book out right now. And in that class, she passed out something called the novel template. And it asks you just to answer some really basic questions about a novel. And she was like, if you can't do this, you can't write your novel. And having come out of, you know, grad school with all this info about like craft in my head and the fact that it was just a blur too, you know, I was like, I am so above this stupid piece of paper. I actually remember I didn't even fill it out. Like, I last minute filled it out in the class because I thought it was so unimportant. And then when it came time to write the next novel, I used it. And I essentially I outlined like a very basic outline. I'm not talking like pages and pages. I'm talking like 2 pages, just so that I understood where I was going. And then everything happened really quickly, got an agent, got a book deal, blah, blah, blah.
All because of an outline.
And like a seriously determined / pissed off spirit. I named the document like things have to happen. Like I was like, what's happening? Something's got to be happening all the time.
But well, and persistence and
Yeah.
angry persistence.
Angry persistence. Yeah, that's me. I remember one of my grad school teachers was like, just don't give up. And I was like, are you kidding? I'm gonna die like rewriting some book.
When you're working now, do you start out with a bit of an outline now, or do you sort of start writing and then outline, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I start with an outline. I start by filling out the novel template, which is so funny. And when I teach, I give that to all my students. In addition to asking like, what is the plot in 2 paragraphs? What is like a slightly larger version of this plot? What is the structure? What is the conflict? It also asks like, what is the time span of this? A lot of people don't think of that when they start writing. And it's, after you have that, you can go and like break up the information accordingly. So I mean, it's very non-magical. I think of like, what do I want to talk about for like 300 pages? What's interesting to me right now? And like, what could happen? I often start with this character, like, okay, could have gone to the manor. What would have happened? Let's take it from there.
What do you know now that you wish that you had known before publishing that first one?
Oh my gosh. I mean, this is like so lame. I'm saying this because I feel like other people said this to me and I just thought, I don't know, I like didn't get the memo. I like heard them, but then it apparently I didn't stick. I would say as far as the business side of all of this, it's really important to be as proactive as possible. Like I wouldn't going back, my first novel, when you're a debut novelist, they do tend to put more power behind you. And really by power, I mean money. It all comes down to money and publicity. It all comes down to money and publicity and how you're positioned in bookstores, what list you're on. It's like, it's sort of already determined, and so first book, they put some money behind me and it was great. And then the second book, nothing happened. And like the differences, I'll just tell you. The first book sold like 32,000 copies. The second book sold like 4,000 or 5,000 copies. These are the same caliber book. Like I wrote them back to back. So it's all about publicity. And if I could do that over, I would just take initiative and like do some stuff myself. Like now I've made up all these events in LA with friends and I'm like gonna go to a nursery later and be like, hey, can I sell your grounded at this nursery because it has to do with trees? Like, why not?
I thought when you said nursery, I was thinking of like childcare.
Oh.
I'm like,
no,
sure, that's exactly the right. I don't know if it's exactly the right fit, but okay, it's bold. It's a bold move.
that'd be so funny.
You could try it. There's some interesting publicity. What sort of parlaying into a similar question, but what is your best advice for early career writers and for your students?
I would say 2 things. I would say, it's really important to finish one thing so that you know what that thing is. I think that fear is a cunning thing and it often results in shit. I said often. I'm supposed to say often now. I don't know how often got stuck in my head, but it's wrong. It often results in starting and then abandoning things. And if you do that, it cuts your confidence down. And also you just don't know what a thing is until you have the entire thing. So I would say like, just keep going, even if you think it sucks, and finish it. That's the goal. That should be the goal, finishing, not being like amazing. And then the other thing is I would just say, have fun. I know maybe that comes across as like cheesy, but I think that that's the goal. I think there's a lot of lore around writing and a lot of bullshit myths, frankly, that it's like torture and it's so hard and like, oh my God, I gotta write this novel. You know, I have a lot of friends who say stuff like this, and I'm thinking, man, this is the dream. Like this is it. What are you talking about? You know, and I think about my little baby swan self, who this is like all I wanted to do. So when I'm talking about like following the organic thread, that's what I'm trying to do. It's like, oh, when I was younger, I just kind of did whatever. I didn't like think I'm only gonna write poems about krill. Like I was just doing whatever came into my head.
Mm-hmm.
I think analyzing is not the friend of art, at least during a first draft.
That's fantastic advice. Traditional last question. When I Want You More is made into a movie or series, what do you think the theme song should be?
Oh, the theme song. Wow.
You thought I was going to say who should play the parts, didn't you?
Yeah, that's what a lot of people say. Oh my God, the theme song. Wow. I don't know. Who's that guy who makes all the theme songs for all the movies? I want an original score.
I like that. That's no one's ever said they want an original score.
All right. Well, that's it.
Swan Huntley, thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Literary Prospects. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. We'll see you next time.